What up, what up? Peace. Well, I guess I say peace at the end, don't I? Now we're going to talk about redistricting, congressional redistricting, which, as you know, occurs once every 10 years. And not every state goes through the process of redistricting. Only the states that increase or decrease in the number of House of Representatives that they have. Is it in the Constitution? Yes. And if you look, it says, representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers. So apportion, meaning spread out through the states depending on population. The more population you have, more members of the House of Representatives you have, and vice versa. Every subsequent term of 10 years, so every 10 years. So it's in the Constitution in such a manner as shall by law direct, meaning if you want to move these districts around or determine the lines, states do have, we assume, some power as they shall by law direct. I guess you would interpret that. So the process overview, every 10 years a census is taken, and after the census is taken, we reapportion the seats. Reapportion means just spread the seats around based upon these shifting populations. And some states will stay the same, some states will decrease, some states will increase. The state legislatures in most circumstances will be the ones who will determine how those law or lines are drawn. Here you have Y, pi, apportion. So, apportionment. Think of it as a pie. You're cutting up the pie and giving a portion to each state. In this case, the pie is the House of Representatives. Some get bigger pieces of pie, others get littler pieces of pie, if you will. And as you see here, these are the gains and decreases based upon the 2010 census. So you'll see that the Midwest is losing seats, and this has been a trend over the last 50, 60 years especially. In the South, the Sun Belt, if you will, are gaining seats. Texas being a big gainer. And primarily that's due to old people retiring and moving. The baby boomers are retiring, meaning they're moving to the south or where it's warmer in the southwest, and we're not, how do I say this, replacing them as quickly with babies. So these areas up here are losing population as these areas in the south are gaining population. If you look, this gives you an indicator of how those laws or lines will be drawn. In most states, the state legislatures get to determine those lines. So you see a lot of red, meaning the Republicans are going to control this process in most state legislatures. And after the election earlier this month, we continue to see an increase in state legislatures that are controlled by the Republican Party. This could make it very difficult for the Democrats unless they can kind of change this as we proceed towards the 2020 census and again, another reapportionment and redistricting of seats. So, a lot of red. And if you're asking, yellow is nonpartisan, meaning they have a nonpartisan commission that would redraw the lines. Very rare. Politicians want to be able to control those lines. If you look at apportionment in Illinois, you see in the early 20th century we had 27 members. That remained the same until the mid-20th century, and now we're down to 18. So we have continued to lose seats in the House of Representatives, not only causing us to lose influence in the House with less membership in our delegation, but also to have less electoral college votes, since that is dependent on members of the House of Representatives. Approximately 700,000 people per representative. Where does this term gerrymandering come from? It comes from a governor way back who drew the lines in his state, and I guess that's supposed to look like a salamander. I think it looks more like a dragon, but I guess dragon-mandering probably sounds a little more ridiculous. Gerrymandering just rolls off the tongue a little easier. And again, gerrymandering is drawing those lines based upon political party. And that is perfectly legal, the courts have ruled. Redistricting, one man, one vote. Alexandra is here, equal to Mr. Dowdy. One man, one vote basically means that my vote means the same as another person's vote. We are not going to have 600,000 representatives in one district and maybe only 1,000 in another. Meaning we have diluted the 600,000. You have one person representing 600,000 as opposed to one person representing 1,000. Okay, so not good. Equal amount of people in each district. If you remember, Baker v. Carr is a Supreme Court case that establishes the principle of one man, one vote. And if you think about it, a baker's dozen is one extra donut in the dozen. One man, one vote, one extra donut. Baker makes donuts. Baker v. Carr. Hopefully that helps. So cracking and packing. When you're drawing these lines, some things are illegal and some things are legal. And these are all based upon Supreme Court cases. What you'll see here is what we call cracking, and that is illegal. If you draw the lines so that you dilute a certain group's voting power, then you are cracking. You are cracking up that particular demographic, or what we like to call a party of interest. So if you represent, say, the pink dots with African American vote, in each of these districts, these lines are drawn to make them the minority. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll say green is Hispanic voters. This would lean Hispanic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, lean Hispanic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, lean Hispanic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, lean Hispanic. That would be illegal. If you can prove that they're drawing those lines to break up or crack a racial minority, and it could be any race that is a minority. If you pack, this is legal. And again, this is legal because you are protecting the community of interest. We have drawn these lines so that we do have an African American representative in Congress. This has been deemed to be perfectly legal. So you've drawn those lines to put the minority, whatever the minority is, whether it be Hispanic, Asian, African American, you draw those lines so that they have representation. And because you're doing it to give representation as opposed to taking away representation, the courts have ruled this to be legal. One thing of note, race cannot be the sole reason for redistricting. However, it can be the key factor. Lines must be connected or contiguous. You can't have one part of your district separate from the others. Now, what has happened is these lines end up being very, very narrow. Very, very narrow. But they have to be connected. They must be relatively compact, meaning, in theory, this 17th district in Illinois, which goes all the way down here, that would probably, if tested from a constitutional standpoint, be deemed illegal. They must be compact in nature. This is less compact. This is certainly very compact. So that you don't have a district that's going all the way through a particular state. Funky districts. That's Toma at the top, funky kid. These districts are districts that are drawn for a particular reason. This district here is in California. It's drawn and it just rides the coastline of the Pacific Ocean. And that tends to be drawn to support those that are wealthy or affluent. Obviously, you probably can imagine the homes that are right on the Pacific are expensive. So you're protecting those interests. Deemed to be constitutional. This one here is Representative Luis Gutierrez's district in Chicago, in suburban Chicago. It takes the northwest side, goes all the way to O'Hare, goes down 290, gets down into Cicero in the southwest side of Chicago. This is drawn to pack a particular demographic together so that they have representation. This is deemed to be perfectly legal. Let me see here? Yeah, South Carolina district here is drawn so that you get an African American representative. As you can see here, it takes all these big cities and puts it into a particular district. And as we know, urban cities tend to be have a higher minority population, therefore you get representation. This is perfectly legal, that's packing. And here is gerrymandering based on party. You have all these suburban areas of Houston that tend to be pretty conservative and certainly would be Republican. This is protecting, at the time, he was the House or Senate Majority Leader, Tom DeLay. And it was his district drawn clearly to benefit him with demographics that would support his candidacy. Why is Barack Obama laughing? Well, this is his district. The white is his district in 2000 for state representative, and he was facing an incumbent. He ran, he got about 43% of the vote, which is a viable threat on the south side of Chicago. So what happened? His house was literally drawn out of the district between 2000 and 2002. And his house was put into another district during that time. Why is he laughing about this? Because he could no longer challenge the incumbent that he gave a good battle the time before. He's laughing because this may have won him the election for president. He was drawn into a district that went all the way up into Chicago, the Gold Coast area, very affluent Democratic base, who most likely, and obviously did, support him in his run for president. So he was drawn into a district and became very active in a district that had a ton of money and political influence. And therefore, as opposed to being in a district that was at the south side, he was moved up into a district going into downtown Chicago and the Gold Coast. I don't know why I'm going like that. But he probably gained from this redistricting of him out of this other member's district. But literally, it could be just taking an opponent and getting him out of your district. Can't run against you then. I should update this. I really should. And I updated it on the student version that you got. This is the 5th Congressional District, and this was a district that I used to live in. It takes the northwest side of Chicago, goes over towards Franklin Park, etc., etc. What the Democrats did when they redistricted in 2010 is they took all of the Republican suburban districts, especially DuPage, and they basically took slivers of Republican-leaning cities and townships, and they connected them as best they could to Democratic strongholds, districts that were strongholds for Democrats. So they literally took the 5th District and grabbed Elmhurst, amongst other, and added it to a district that probably voted about 70% Democratic or more. And you take this, probably I'd say 60% Republican area, and you've now diluted the Republican vote. Again, this is gerrymandering, it's perfectly legal. So that's what they've done in that regard. You can look at my webpage for the updated version, or I emailed it to you last week, and you can see the old district and the new district. Sorry it wasn't in this version of the PowerPoint. But the districts change, and the lines can change drastically, and therefore change the balance of power in Congress, and certainly in each state's congressional delegation. Have a great evening. Come back for part 2. Peace.